Hey everyone, it's South Paris, Top 40 Theory. Today I want to talk about the harmony and Goodbyes by Post Malone featuring Young Thug. What I particularly want to talk about is the use of parsimonious voice leading in this song. Parsimonious voice leading is when you move between chords in such a way that each voice in the chord either stays in place or moves up or down by one semitone. So this is what it looks like in this song. So you can see this is a chord progression. You got 4 chords, F major, A major chord, which is secondary dominant of 6, which is the next chord, D minor, and then you get B flat major. And as you can see, each note horizontally either stays put or moves a maximum of 1 semitone. So this creates a very smooth harmonic texture, and it can also be a very dramatic texture. It's something that's widely used in film scores, in late 19th century and early 20th century music. And one of the reasons it's so dramatic is the combination of this smooth texture with chromatic tones, because it's almost impossible to move between chords, between diatonic chords, without occasionally having to move by a whole step or more. So let me just play you the intro so you can hear sort of the dramatic nature of this chord progression. Like I said, the combination of the smoothness and the chromaticism is what gives it partially its dramatic effect. So I want to kind of play around with this C sharp and move it down to C natural to make it a completely diatonic progression. So now it's just going to be 1, 3, 6, 4 progression. Let's listen to that first on its own, then I'll play it with the vocals. It's an acceptable chord progression. It just sounds very different from this. Right? It's smoother. The transition from C sharp to D is smoother, and you get that kind of nice little melody on the top. So C, C sharp, D. So let me, again, lower it down to C natural and play it with the vocals this time so you hear what it would sound like.
Me and Kurt feel the same. So much pleasure is pain. My girl spites me in vain. All I do is complain. She needs something to change.
Alright, it's completely acceptable. It's just a different kind of effect. Whereas with this, sounds like this.
Me and Kurt feel the same. So much pleasure is pain. My girl spites me in vain. All I do is complain. She needs something to change. Need to take off the ass. So fuck it.
So that's one thing. That's the effect of that C sharp. One of the dangers, however, of parsimonious voice leading, I say dangers in air quotes, is that the melodies or the internal melodies of the chord progression can get a bit static. Like if you look at this middle melody, it's very static. It's like 3 A's that just stay put, and then finally it goes up to what Ableton calls A sharp, but it's actually V flat. And even this top melody, it goes up by half steps, so there's some interest there, but then it becomes static. So especially in places like the intro, yeah, it's a pretty short intro, but you could lose interest if it just kind of becomes static. So what they did, which I thought was a really nice move, is they took this middle line, the A, B flat, and they gave it to something with a completely different timbre, women's chorus, which sounds like more or less like this. Right, pretty static line on its own, but what it does is it allows it to kind of break through, and now you have 2 melodies that kind of dovetail. You have this top melody, C, C sharp, D, and at the moment where this becomes static, this line, the chord melody, starts to move. So the motion is kind of dovetailed between these two. So let me just isolate these 2 lines so you hear. Now the this becomes static. And you hear the women's choir. And again, I'll play you from the actual song. So I think that's a really thoughtful kind of use of parsimonious voice leading. And you know, you get the effect and you mitigate any kind of staticness by kind of using timbre to dovetail between these two melodies. One exception in this chord progression to the principle of parsimonious voice leading is when you go back from this final chord, this A flat major chord, back to this F major chord, this D has to move down by a full step to get to this C. So that's kind of like a dent in the plan of the parsimonious voice leading, but this, to a certain extent, is balanced in the chorus. In the chorus, you get a change in the chord progression. They could have stuck pretty easily with the same chord progression. Let me play you what it would sound like if they had just stuck to that same chord progression.
I want you out of my head. I want you out of my bedroom tonight. There's no way I can save you, 'cause I need to be saved, true. I'm no good at goodbye.
It would have completely worked. They didn't have to change that chord progression, but they did, and they changed it to this, which is a little counterintuitive because the first chord of this chord progression is a G minor chord, and the first note of the melody is an A. That's not a chord tone, and you kind of expect the first chord there to be an F because of that motion into A, which is a chord tone in F. So it's a little bit surprising that you get a G minor chord.
I want you out of my head. I want you out of my bedroom tonight. There's no way I can save you, 'cause I need to be saved, true.
These are the chords. You have G minor, C, A minor, D minor, and then you get to that four chord, B flat, and B flat minor. Again, I'm not a mind reader. I don't know what was in their mind when they chose that, but to me, it's almost like this entire chord progression in the chorus was built in order to redeem that motion from B flat to F, because it moves very directionally towards that B flat. You get a G minor, C, A minor, D, so it's 2, 5, 3, 6, which is a reversal of a traditional chord progression that's like 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 that moves towards the tonic. It reverses it and it moves towards 4 in the other direction. It hits that 4 in the third measure of the chorus, and then it turns into a minor 4. You move through these chords, and then you get to this 4 chord. It's a B flat major chord. Again, ignore that A sharp. It's a B flat. And then you get that D. And the D in the last measure, it moves down by a half step to, again, Ableton calls it C sharp. This is a D flat. So it's the enharmonic equivalent of that C sharp from the other progression. But now it's actually D flat because it's a B flat chord, and it turns from a B flat major to a B flat minor chord. And that creates a very smooth transition, a parsimonious transition back to one chord.
I want you out of my head. I want you out of my bedroom tonight. There's no way I can save you, 'cause I need to be saved, true. I'm no good at goodbyes. We're both acting insane.
This is like perfectly crafted to go back. So whether or not they intended it, the end result was very effective. Stop there, Stop 40 Theory. I'll see you in the next one.